fantasizing is actually making God's goodness look bland and boring, and that is perverted.
Yeah.
And that is not okay, because you see that in the garden. Little did she know she was already made in his image.
What are your thoughts on dating apps? What do you guys think? Like, I know you guys have had a couple of awkward experiences, but have you guys used them more often than not? Do you feel like it's only kind of the pool that you can pick from? Like, what does that look like right now?
I feel like it's your purpose behind it, because some people are on there to be shysty. Some people are on there because they're seeking validation. Some people are on there because they actually want a relationship. Like, it really is, and it shows, like, when you get on these dates, what they really want from you and things like that. So, I mean, I don't think they're necessarily bad. There are Christian ones out there that are beautiful. People are getting married. It's gorgeous. I love it. But I think, like, some people, like anything, can abuse a good thing.
Yeah.
And it turns
That's real.
twisted.
Yeah. I had that one experience with Tinder, and then after that, I said, you know what, this probably just isn't my vibe, and I stopped dating apps. But I realized when I got into a posture of desperation, I was like, maybe I should go on farmersonly.com. Maybe I should go on Christian Mingle. But it was because I reached this platform of desperation, because, like how you just said, I want to be valued. I want to be validated. And what better, us as human beings, we love instant gratification. And I could get that on a dating app.
Well, I think how you use it is important, because I think a lot of the times, like you were saying, some people just, they do not have good intentions on it. But I think maybe we should talk about, like, what are good intentions in relationships? What are we looking for in a godly relationship?
I think you just have to look at the fruits. The fruits that he's bearing by himself are going to either be amplified or, like, decrease once you get into a relationship. So I feel like it's really essential to look at that first, because I feel like a lot can come out the woodworks once you get into a relationship. So definitely you have to be looking for godly qualities, who God says a man is, who God wants men to be, how he wants men to treat women. We see in the Bible how we're supposed to be treated, things like that, before you get into a relationship and things like that. You should be seeking that out.
Whether you're Christian or not, a lot of men can talk the talk.
You
know, like, a man can sweet talk you all the live long day.
They love talking.
You know, and I think it's, I don't know, this is just my assumption, that it's almost easier for Christian men to say the right things. Like, they know what to say. They have a playbook. You know, I want to pursue your heart. I want to guard you.
God told me you're my future wife. Boy, take that back. Like, let's be so
like, don't
very
bring
for
that
real.
in here. It's okay. We can leave that back there. But, like, you can talk the talk, but, like, do you really walk the walk? And, like, what are the fruits of your life? Who do you hang out with? What do people say about you? Like, not, like, trust rumors and, you know, like, you know, whatever, but like, measuring somebody's character is really, like, I think what I've seen to be the really great measuring stick.
Yes, men can make mistakes in pursuing women and moving too fast and being overly pursuing in a way to where it's like I've had guys come in my DMs and be like, God told me you're my wife. And I'm like, did God say that, or did your conscience say that? Because those are two completely different people. And while we could say, men need to be better about being wise and having that discernment, that we also can't expect men to be perfect as well. And I think we could often hold men to the standard of this perfect godly man, and we expect him to do husband things as a boyfriend, where we expect him to be a husband in a talking stage. And that's not going to happen, because we're not even in as one.
There's not grace for that.
No, there's not grace for that. And I've seen so many people turn away from really good men who are just learning the process of sanctification. And they're like, no, can't do it. He's doing this. He's being sanctified just like you. And this relationship is actually supposed to sharpen him. So don't expect him to be perfect. Rather, expect him to be willing. And if he's not willing, then that's going to tell you his fruit. And that's going to tell you how he feels about you and how he wants to move forward in Christ. So if he's not willing, okay, different story. But don't expect him to be perfect, because he's not perfect whatsoever. And neither are you. So how dare you, you know?
I do want to touch on real quick that idea of, like, guys saying that, like, you're my wife thing so much. And, like, I think we hear that, like, as, like, a joke a lot too online. But, like, the idea of, like, why do we have that joke in, like, Christian culture? And I think it's because we glorify marriage and we really set that as a goalpost in Christian like relationships and in the Christian walk of, like, marriage is the finish line. And so, like, young Christians and like especially if you're in community and you're in a church, and so then like you're seeing your church and your brothers and sisters in Christ as your dating pool, because we've set this finish line or this goalpost for young Christians of marriage. And so then I think a lot of people are moving with that goal in mind rather than, you know, maybe thinking about it as I'm moving towards what God has for me, whether that's marriage or not. And when I look around me and see who's also there, then like that's who I can look to like maybe find a spouse. But maybe it doesn't have to be like who's in your young adults group, you know?
Right. Because marriage and relationships are an add-on to what God has already given us. It's not something that is, not everybody is promised a relationship. Ooh. And
say that again.
I know, and it's hard because a lot of girls, especially Christian girls, because we are sitting in a community that puts such emphasis on being married and being in a relationship, it's hard to hear that because you want to live your happy ever after and live your fairy tale and things like that, but it's not promise, it's an add-on, it's a blessing.
I kind of want to open the topic with like, I know there's pressures around being single, but it really isn't the end-all be-all to get married. So how do we live out singleness and see it as an honor to be single and to be, if marriage is for you, hidden by the Lord in this time? What does that look like?
If you have the idol of marriage, you're always going to chase after people to feel that satisfaction that only God can give you.
That too.
Like I noticed that I would go and pursue these men because I didn't want to wait on the Lord. I didn't want to have patience on him. And the whole reason as to why the Israelites constructed a golden calf was because they couldn't be patient on God. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was making golden men because I couldn't wait for what the Lord had for me. I think the deeper root as to why we hide and why we put ourselves in postures of desperation is because deep down we're hurt and we don't know how to resolve it. So we will go to the first thing we see or to desperate measures to just be validated in love. And we will run to the wrong places sometimes and hide in the wrong places, either with men or situationships or people or even it could be things. And we expect those things to fill that void when only God can. And he needs to be our hiding place. Even think of hide and seek. It's easy for us to hide, but to seek, it requires work. It requires effort. Good. When you're seeking and when you're playing that game, you have to count, you have to walk around alone, and you have to find the people who don't want to be found. And when you hide, you could just go anywhere and you could crawl up in a ball and you're stuck in isolation. But when you're seeking, you're finding the parts that are hidden and you're revealing it and you're exposing it. And that's exactly what we need to do in our hiding places.
It's like where it's kind of awkward to like have to put up boundaries in dating because you want to be so close with somebody. And vulnerability is really important in building relationships and understanding one another. That's so important. But then like also knowing the line of like what's appropriate here and how much can this person's shoulder and like what is appropriate for this type of relationship, like where you were saying putting husband responsibilities on somebody who's just a boyfriend. So true. They're not meant to walk in that with you yet. Because there's not a grace or a covenant there that like once I know this, I'm not gonna leave. Once I know this, I'm here to fight with you, put that in the center and fight together around this thing, but they don't know how to support you in that.
In Song of Solomon, it says, don't awaken love until its appointed time. It's so real to have soul ties with people that you do enter into situationships with. I can totally relate to that. Or relationships where you feel like this is it. And even if it's not it, even if you know it's toxic, you're still investing because it's all you have.
Out of desperation. And I think even when we idolize dating in marriage, that we go into this toxic cycle of fantasizing things and going and becoming delusional. And it says in Proverbs, those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense.
Wow.
Gives me chills because I think we see this idol of marriage and we see people even on TikTok and social media. And when we create these bonds with people and we're in relationships with them and we're dating, like I can't tell you how many times a cute guy has DM'd me and I'm like, oh my gosh, my wedding dress. Like, like, oh my gosh, we would look so cute next to one. The thoughts are going, like the fantasy.
That's even harder as women. Like men, I mean, we're gonna get a little controversial here, but like traditionally pornography is a bigger struggle for men.
Yep.
A visual pornography, right? But for women, like what's really popular right now is those romance books. You know? And it's all like reading. Because it's in your mind and you're fantasizing about it. And like I
make your own reality.
You can make
and
it.
if you haven't, like, I caught myself, like, I don't even know a guy, but from what I can see on social media, I create this whole, like, this is what he's like, and this is how it would be here, this is how, you know, like, but that's not even him.
Placing godly expectations on human men is so unfair.
Yeah.
That's where that really comes in, because I feel like, and it connects so much to being, being Delulu is placing expectations of what you want on people who don't have a clue in the world. It's not fair at all. And it can be so poisonous too, because when they turn around and they don't do what you made up in your head, it's crazy to think about.
The definition of fantasy isn't just to have an imagination, because you can imagine things and be creative, but to have a fantasy means to imagine things that aren't going to happen. So now that I know that a fantasy is imagining something that isn't supposed to happen, now that I know that they're lies the majority of the time. So when I'm fantasizing about things that aren't going to happen, what do you think that's doing for me? And I would like to say that fantasizing, when we fantasize in relationships and what a relationship should look like, and ignoring what God says about relationships, fantasizing is actually making God's goodness look bland and boring, and that is perverted. And that is not okay, because you see that in the garden. The serpent went up to Adam and Eve, and they were like, he said, did God really tell you? He planted the seed of a fantasy in Eve's mind. Just think, you could be just like him. Little did she know she was already made in his image. The very thing that Satan said, what if you were just made in his image? Girl, if you don't stand up, you are made in his image. And she believed and indulged in that fantasy, and because of that, and she indulged in it and chose it, she was sold on a lie, on a fantasy. Like, why do you think Disney is like one of the biggest productions in the world? And it's because it sells you on fantasy, the princess and the prince, and he rescues the girl, and everything lives happy ever after, because that is a natural desire we have, because we are naturally prideful. So we want things to go our way. So when we indulge in that, we're basically saying to God, your goodness isn't enough for me.
I've already figured it out. I already
figured it out. I would meet men that I thought was it. They're gonna be my boyfriend. They're gonna be my boo thing, Pookie, like, hey, babe. And they not, because their decoys being sent my way. And I would like to say every time a decoy has been sent in my life, it's my faith being tested. And what do? I indulge in it. Instead of trusting the Lord with it, because I'm so desperate to be loved. And that hurt comes from, like how you said, like daddy issues, you know, like having a not sustainable father in the household can alter the way that you see men, and even alter the way that you depend on God.
That's really been like
So true.
a lot of like my story was that like my dad wasn't in the picture as much. Like he was still around, but not like present in the home. And so I only had women in my family. There was no men in the house. And so I never had an example to like look up to of what pursuit looked like, or like how, like to see my mom treated the right way, or any of the women in my family treated the right way. And so like, I like that thing that you said about like, why are we getting so serious so fast? I think that I like really idolized like what a healthy relationship could be, because I thought that a lot of our family's problems would be solved if that had just worked out, if my dad was just here, if you know they hadn't been abused or left, or you know whatever it was, then like we'd all be okay. And so then I was looking at that, and I was thinking my relationship is gonna have to be perfect. I can't mess up. I can't fail in my future relationship. And so I was trying to put that like really serious thing. I think that happens to a lot of Christian couples.
I think the biggest slap in the face I would ever receive in my marriage is my man choosing me out of convenience and not because he enjoys me as a friend. I want my husband to enjoy me. I don't want to be a maid for my husband. I don't want him to choose me because I'm convenient for his lifestyle or for his religion. I want a man to pursue me because we get along and we like the same things.
But how are you gonna know if all you're talking about is like
Exactly.
deep
You need to be
spiritual stuff, and all your trauma?
Exactly.
And honestly, I think the best way to do that for us as women is to get around other women. The most healing that I've seen come in my life is when I've actually had close female friendships. And so in order to have these healthy relationships, I think the best way to heal is to get girls like this and to be together. and learn from each other.
So good.
So good.
Hey girl! Thank you so much for the girl talk today. Nothing beats getting to just talk through these hard topics with the girls. And I do not want to miss you in our next chat. And so be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a post. Chat to you soon!